Bonjour les élèves. Today we're going to go on to part 2 of time. So this part might be a little more complicated because you got to think of the clock a little bit differently. In the last section, we looked at the minutes 1 through 30. So the clock on the right-hand side. And you just added. You took the hour you had, you took the minutes you had. That's it. Here's our hour plus these minutes. And that's all you had to do. Now, looking at the other side of the clock, you're going to have to kind of think, maybe math a little bit. Think of a number line. Think of numbers when you do rounding. When you got to the half of something, a 2.5, what did you do? You had to round up to 3. If it was 2.4, you kept it at 2. Well, that's what we're going to be doing with time on this side of the clock. Also, we do this in English. Sometimes you'll hear people say, oh, it's 10 to 5. It's quarter to 3. And that's kind of what you're going to have to do when we're talking about the next set of minutes. So open up your notes and turn to page 15. Telling time up to 30 minutes. We did that one. That was where we started by just adding your minutes. Then you added your quarter. You added your half. And we filled all these in last time. Now we're heading to the time 31 to 59. This is when you're going to have to kind of change your mindset a little bit. So if you look at my explanation, it says sometimes we say 20 to 6, quarter to 7, 10 to 8 to give the time. That is what the French will usually do, giving the time with the minutes 31 to 59. Once you have minutes on the left-hand side of the clock, that's why I said think round clock, you have to say how many minutes it's going to be until the next hour. Because when your minutes are on that side of the clock, you're closer to the next hour than the hour you're at. So you're rounding. So let's look at the formula. What do? You look at the clock, you look at your time, you're like, uh-oh, these minutes are past 30. This is a 31, or they're pretty close to the next hour. It's on the left side of the clock. What do? Well, you'd use the same formula. You start off with il est. So il est, it is. But now, when you say the number, instead of seeing a number 2 and writing a number 2, you've got to stop and go, what hour is it closest to? What hour is it almost? Well, at 2:50, it's almost 3 o'clock. 2:50 is closer to 3 o'clock than it is to 2 o'clock. So you put the hour it's closest to. Then you still have the word hour, like you did in your normal formula. And then here is the difference. You have to add the word moins. It means minus. It's kind of like doing a math problem. You're going to say 3 hours minus so many minutes. You have to have that word. If you don't have that word, the time is the time on the other side of the clock. So we had, il est 3 heures moins. Remember, it's almost at 2:50, it's almost 3. 3 hours minus what? So now you've got to say, how many minutes is it until that new hour? How many minutes until it becomes 3 o'clock? So at 2:50, in 10 more minutes, it'll be 3 o'clock. So that's the number you use. So you'd say, il est 3 heures moins 10. It is 3 hours minus 10 minutes. Or read it backwards. I like to read it backwards. It's 10 until 3. 10 minutes until it becomes 3 o'clock. If you write it and try to read it backwards to yourself, and if you're not saying the right thing, something's wrong. When you have the minutes on the left-hand side of the clock, the numbers you see in a digital time are not the numbers you're writing in your sentence. So that can be calculated by just looking at the round clock and counting. Or if you are somebody who likes math, you can use the number 60. Remember, there's 60 minutes in an hour. So if the time was 7:55, you could say, what hour is it closer to? It's getting closer to 8 o'clock. How many minutes until it's 8 o'clock? 5. But if you couldn't figure that out, you could just say, okay, well, 60 minus 55 is a 5. So the answer would be, elle est 8 heures. Oop, there's an S missing on heure right here. Write it in. That's a typo there. Moins 5. So it est 8 heures moins 5. It is 8 hours minus 5 minutes, or it's 5 minutes until 8. Fill that in your notes and correct my typo there. Add that little S in hours. If you need to pause right here, go ahead. Okay, there is one exception. It's always those quarters. So if you look, when you're at 45, it's the next quarter of the clock. So we had this quarter, then we had the whole half. Now we have another quarter. So, and when it's quarter to, you're going to say that it's quarter to 3. If it's 4:45, you're going to say, what hour is it closest to? 5. So it's quarter to 5. So the special word for quarter, remember, was car on the other side. But on this side, you have to say le quart. So it becomes moi le quart. So think of our special words. You had a quart, et demi, and now moi le quart. So let's look at these 2 times at the bottom and fill them in. The first one says 11:50. So when you look at 11:50, what hour is it going to be? What is it pretty close to? Is it closer to 11 o'clock or is it closer to 12 o'clock? Well, it's closer to 12. But what do we know about 12? You can't use that as an hour. We've got to use one of our special words. So I didn't have an AM or PM there, so it's your choice. I'll be honest, I usually pick midi. Why? It's less to write. It's 4 words or 4 letters. So you'd write il est midi. It is noon minus. So if it's at the 50, how many minutes is it until noon? 10. If you're not sure, say 60 minus 50 is 10. So your answer would be il est midi moins 10. Or il est minuit moins 10. Depending if you picked AM or PM. The next one, 1:35. 1:35, what is it closer to? It's closer to 2 o'clock than it is to 1 o'clock. So you're going to write il est, and you're going to pay 2 de heures. So il est 2 heures minus how many minutes is it? So your hand would be here on the 7. So you could count it. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Or you could say 60 minus 35 is 25. So your answer would be il est 2 heures moins 25. It is 25 minutes until 2 o'clock. Or it is 2 hours minus 25 minutes. You could write them either way. Pause if you're still writing. If not, we're going to move on. So look at the clock. Picture this, because this can be confusing. If the big hand, the minutes, is on the left-hand side, you use moi. You're saying how many minutes until the next hour. You're minusing. If the big hand is on the right-hand side, you use a for the a quart and the a demi. Otherwise, you just put it on there. You don't even need the word a. So a plus minutes after the hour is the after. So that's 01 to 30. Moi is the minutes before the hour. That's 31 to 59. So what are our specials? A quart for quarter past the hour or after the hour. A demi for half past the hour, or so half of the clock. And moi le quart for quarter to the hour. So that's 45. Those are our 3 special words that you've got to remember. A quart, a demi, moi le quart. Sorry. I went back too fast here. So how to find the minutes? You could look at the 12-hour clock and count and go 5, 10, 15, or count backwards starting at the 12 and counting backwards till you get to your hand. Or you can subtract them from 20, 350. So you have 4 hours, 4 o'clock minus 10 minutes. So let's look at some examples. So if we're going to say it is 12 o'clock, what would we have to put there? Stop and look at it. What do you think it'll be? You don't have to write this anywhere. It would be il est midi or il est minuit. We're going to use midi. If it was 12:10, you would just add the 10. Il est midi 10. If it's 12:15, you have to add your special one. Écart, il est midi écart. If it was 12:30, you would say midi et demi. But now, what if it's 12:50? You can't say 12 anymore. Now we got to change it because 12:50, other side of the clock, and it's closer to the number 1. So, il est 1h moins 10. You got to use minus and then the numbers until it gets there. So 60 minus 50 is 10. So 12:45, il est 1h moins le quart. So see how it changed from midi to une? When you're on the second side of the clock, your hour is going to be a little different. Okay, that is end for today. Next time we look at our time notes, we're going to look at the 24-hour clock. Au revoir.